Hello, today I'll be talking about my newest Desert Wind level, where yes, I am making a serious attempt to make a good Desert Wind level. And so here I'm going to show you why I chose to make a Desert Wind level and how I designed the level to work while also trying to make it good. Right, so let me get to the meat and potatoes. The whole point of the level is, first we're using the Desert Wind from Loup&Snoop. It's very important to note that in Loup&Snoop, the wind always blows to the right constantly. You don't have this pause, like stop and go, that you have in other styles. Like here in Loup&Snoop, the wind always blows to the right, consistently. And then the way that the whole level is built is that it's a don't look right level. The idea being that Mario is not allowed to look right, but he can move left as freely as he wants. So the idea is that the wind allows you to move in both directions, because the wind can push you to the right, but Mario can't move himself like that way normally. So this gives him the ability to move no matter how he wants. And then whenever Mario basically looks the wrong way, he's funneled into this reset room that basically resets the state and gives him a hint, like, by the way, don't look right. A lot of people get it immediately. A lot of people really need to see this room. Having the reset room is very, very important to letting the player understand what the rules are, because a lot of players will reset because they think they're dead, and that's not a good idea. If the player thinks that they died because they didn't know the rules of the level, that's going to come off as a dick move, and they're not going to be very conducive to, playing through your level. So let me talk through the structure of the level. Now that you have the general idea that, it's don't look right and the wind moves you right, how did I build the level to make this, good, all right? So majority of the video, I'm going to be talking about the first room, because the first room of any sort of gimmick level is the most important room in terms of design of the entire level. So first, when you enter the level, you start out looking the wrong direction. So I need this mechanism to wait until Mario has basically looked in the correct direction to let him out into the rest of the level. Otherwise, he can't progress. And it's gated by this POW. The only thing that Mario can see besides this wall is this giant boo. The boo does not have to be large for the mechanism to work, but I made him large to draw even more attention to this boo. So at the moment the POW goes off, now the stacks have been broken, and now the don't look right mechanism is now active. At this point, looking to the right at any time causes the boo to move ever so slightly, causing the muncher to blow the bomb and then trigger the mechanism. Now, a lot of people, they don't get it, and that's okay. They'll just platform here like normal, oh cool, and then they'll see arrow sign into a pipe. What? And this is where the don't look right mechanism is. You have to be very careful with the don't look right mechanism. You have to account for both the player understanding and potentially not understanding. So this dot line block very clearly lets you know, by the way, you can't go through here, but the arrow sign says you need to be going through here, meaning that you have to basically figure out, okay, I need the switch state to be on. And then the only way out of this room that there's otherwise not really a good way to die in besides the boo is through the reset pipe. And the reset pipe gives you the information that you need. By the way, don't look right, while also resetting it. This reset pipe also comes with an additional giant boo on the left side in case it's not obvious enough, so that the player is naturally inclined to look at the boo to stop the boo from progressing. Because sometimes people will be no right, and then they'll just see the boo and be turn at him. And so all these things are kind of designed subtly to get the player to the point where they understand to not look right. Once the player knows to not look right, now the level can begin. We start off with getting the player used to these controls, because no matter what, this level idea is a very love it or hate it experience. Some people will really love the idea of, oh, look at this cool new control scheme. You can move to the right with the Desert Wind, and you can't look right normally. So the way that you correct your jumps, etc. in the middle is extremely unique. And a lot of people will be what an asshole. I just want to do some basic platforming, and you're stopping me from looking right. This is frustrating, all right? You're gonna, in this sort of level, you will see both sides of the aisle. From highly skilled players and less skilled players, it doesn't matter. Some people like the idea, some people will not. And so in either case, we want to get the player to the point where they gain the skills on this very foreign moveset in order to actually like progress through the level. And so the first thing is, now that we can't look right, we're basically forced into doing some really basic platforming. The only thing you can really do here to go right is jump. No advanced controls here, literally just a very basic jump. Now here we're going to do a basic jump moving to the left side, and this is going to really require you to twirl, which is a core skill that I need in the level. And the reason why, you know, it's kind of important that this is happening here is that it also sets expectations. Like, in this level, you will need to be twirling, and I'm not going to, like, give you twirl indicators. You need to figure that shit out on your own. Like, twirl liberally. All right, and when you can figure out to twirl and go against the wind, now we can now we can move. All right? Then a couple more basic movements to get up, all right? The entirety of that first room is just dedicated to teaching the player and getting them acclimated to moving around in this foreign moveset. So in this next room, this is still kind of like a tutorial-ish zone, but now getting a little bit more involved. Here, this looks like a really basic jump, you know, from wiggler to wiggler. But if you adjust your moves, if you adjust your position midway, you'll trigger the on-off switch, which at this point, now I've added munchers with a bzzzt sound effect on them, so that every time Mario turns right, he gets like a very clear notification, by the way, you fucked up. Right? And so a lot of people, they realize that, oh shit, like I can't correct my jumps, like I can't do this normally because I'm not allowed to look right. And this doesn't really, like, this is only like half related to Desert Wind here. It's mostly a factor of not being allowed to look right. And again, in this room, if you fuck up, the penalty is not death. It's, you know, we're resetting the room and reminding you, by the way, stop looking that way. All right? So from here, you have to basically jump from wiggler to wiggler without correcting your jump in the middle. You can accelerate in the middle by holding left, but you cannot, like, the way that Desert Wind works, you actually only gain rightward momentum when you're on the ground. If you were to like zero out your speed in midair, you would quickly find yourself like just not being able to move right at all. You just like come to a standstill. So the wind is actually not that annoying when you're in the air, which is like really like counterintuitive. Here, I'm basically like alternating. Here's some obstacles where we're moving to the left without looking right, and then here's some obstacles that really need you to use the wind. Again, getting the player used to, okay, we're going to be using the wind. Additionally, and we saw this again in the first screen, bringing in these donut blocks. And these donut blocks are going to be really important to like the level's theme as a whole. And the reason I chose donut blocks is that they give you a little bit of time pressure to basically get off of them. They give you a little less time pressure than a flimsy lift that just falls down, or flimsy lift with wings, which also falls down a lot more quickly. But they give you just enough time to, like, you know, build rightward momentum if you need. All right. Here, this is basically like a very clear, small introduction to donut blocks, and that's kind of called foreshadowing. Like, it's going to appear later. Okay, here, this is another major obstacle that's going to teach you the tech you need to be able to move around the level. Specifically, ground pounding. Like, you can't, because the wind doesn't affect you in midair, you really need to find a way to move right. And so let's say that you just spend a long time like not understanding what this indicator means. Like, this is a very standard indicator that means ground pound. Eventually the player will figure out, yes, ground pound, even if they can't read the indicator, and then jump up here. Now if the player whiffs this and accidentally misses, there's all sorts of platforms here so that they don't fall all the way down to the bottom. So it's almost built like a getting over it. And this is all by design. We're trying to be like as lenient as possible because the idea itself is already kind of like grading. But hopefully the idea of this is to like teach the player, by the way, ground pounding is a way to adjust your speed mid-air to move to the right. Then one last jump, just like basic movement forward. Now, going onward, I'm just going to go through the level like very quickly because now we have like, I've shown you like the base ideas. The main rest of the level revolves around these donut blocks, which are on tracks. Now, the reason I chose donut blocks on tracks is that tracks give me a large amount of ability to just like control the trajectory of these donut blocks. And then have all sorts of platforming challenges that go in between. At every point of the level, I'm basically like reinforcing, okay, here are the skills that you need to beat the level. And then like, did you learn the skills? Yes. If you learn the skills and then use it to flex, then you can just like progress through no problem. The only important point that I'll make on this little room is that this early section with donut blocks, a lot of people like struggle trying to figure out like how the fuck they're supposed to move on the donut blocks. They're like, oh, trying to adjust on this so that they don't fall. Like some people like struggle on that a lot more. And so again, with these reset doors, we can just like try again. But basically teaching the player, like this area is like, not a whole lot is going on. You can get this bonus power up. But this is mostly like to teach the player, by the way, get used to these donut block platforms because we're going to be using a lot of them for the entire rest of the level. Alright. Then throughout this whole section, there's a couple of reset points. Again, instead of putting death pits here, I put several pipes that every time you fuck up, it sends you right back to the beginning of this section, which is not necessarily the best. I wish I could like put you partway through without cheese, but it is what it is. Okay, the very last note I'll make on this area is this setup being global. Now, normally with a don't look right mechanism, like you can't put a boo on global ground. So what I did here is put the boo in a stack with a boss. Specifically here I chose Larry just because Larry makes less noise in this style. And I put the boo on a flimsy lift that's on a track. So this this bomb is on global ground. So the whole contraption is globally loaded. So if you look right, all the way over here, the don't look right contraption is still loaded. And that's kind of like key. All this is hidden, it's all happening behind the hood. So it's not like interrupting with the player's like experience. But it's still like of note if you were to try to make a sort of level like this again. Right, and then here's the last major section, which is going to be a vertical pseudo auto-scroller. Here, branching paths, both paths basically, like the platforming challenge are like balanced as much as possible. I have some light indication here. Mostly people are supposed to figure shit out on their own. I put some indicators where it might not be clear. Some people still don't get it, and that's okay because you can keep trying. I try to go for a very very light on the indicators because it's more about like, you know, you see the platforms, just kind of like follow the platforms, nothing like super complex, nothing like happening really fast and blind. And then to finish off the level, we have one final obstacle. You have one shot at this 1-up. If you look right, you fuck it up. You don't get the 1-up. But if you do, then you're rewarded with a 1-up. If you do this one final challenge, you have one shot at it. All right. Then one last thing to say on this level is pixel art. For a good thumbnail, you probably want to like pick. For this, I chose Crullers because I want it to be like, you know, sweet smelling donuts or whatever for my theme, and you can read more about that in the description. But here you can see I've gone through several iterations of what the pixel art might look like. I just kind of like left them in the level in case I want to use more. And this is the final version of the pixel art. Pixel art is pretty important to like draw people into the level. And lastly, some extra like little secrets built into the level. Like specifically some shout outs here for Roy Roo, Mr. Carson, Nabas. You know, if they were to like look at the map of the level, then they can see, oh cool, the guy shouted me out, what a nice guy, or whatever. I don't know. So that's overall how this level goes. It's an approved Team Jamp level. So, you know, feel free to farm it for Jamp points. Let me know if you like this sort of content, and I'll see you around.